This is a story about someone who loved deeply, someone who noticed the lies and stayed anyway, because leaving them would hurt, but accepting that they changed, that hurt even more. So you stayed silent. You laughed when you were supposed to. You said good night, like everything was all right. You tried to act normal, even when nothing felt normal anymore. This video, this message, is for you. The person who knew the truth, but chose peace over confrontation. The person who hoped things would go back to how they used to be. The person who wasn't fooled, just afraid of losing the one thing they still wished was real. If that's you, stay. I understand you more than you think. It never starts with something obvious. It's not like a movie where you catch them in the act or see something dramatic. No, real heartbreak is quieter. Maybe it was the night they sat beside you, but their mind was somewhere else. You said something funny, and they smiled, but not the way they used to. Or maybe you asked them, "Are you okay?" And they said, "Yeah, just tired." But their eyes told a different story. Or one day, you looked at them, really looked at them, and felt like you didn't recognize them anymore.